Very well. Jinchi took out another spoon and stirred the official's tea. This spoon showed no reaction. You are safe, he said. An unmistakable look of relief passed over the man's face before he shrank back, obviously chagrined. Jinchi was not in any mood to reprimand him. He simply wanted someone to manage the paperwork. This man appeared capable enough for the task, and furthermore he never looked at Jinchi as if he suspected anything unusual. All Jinchi needed was for the man to do a good job until Basin returned. Put it out of your mind. There is more work to do, Jinchi said. He set the poisoned tea on a corner of his desk and returned to his papers. His assistant, still pale as the grave, went back to his desk. Jinchi tried not to let the other man notice as he heaved a sigh. His days were restless and tense. He had lost track of how long it had been since he quit pretending to be a eunuch. It had been months. Being part of the court proper meant much more work, and he seemed to get less sleep every day. He had at least been escaping into town to take a breather every 10 days or so, but there was none of that anymore. Jinchi had finished his work for the day and was sitting on a couch in his room. He had had his dinner and taken his bath, so now all that was left was to go to bed. He did not feel like sleeping, not after what had happened that afternoon. How about some nice fruit, Master Jinchi? His ever-considerate lady-in-waiting Su-en brought him some pear slices, each on its own little skewer. Give, he said. Perhaps it sounded a little childish, but this was his milk mother, a woman who had known him since before he was weaned. It was just the two of them, and she wouldn't be upset. He put a piece of pear in his mouth, savouring the crunch and the light, sweet flavour. The juice was cool and refreshing as it went down his throat. He thought about asking for a cup of wine, but decided he would be satisfied with this tonight. You must be so tired. You haven't been into town lately, not even on your days off. Your work is taking all your time and energy, Su-en said. Yes, that is what happens when the work is endless. Going forward, I think I may need more assistance, and more ladies in waiting, I might add. Jinchi's milk mother was nearing old age, and she sometimes remarked on how the years weighed upon her. He would have liked to hire some ladies in waiting, but his circumstances made it difficult. Ah, how I wish Maomao would come back, Su-en said. Jinchi thought the same thing, but he only shook his head. He knew it wasn't possible. I am sure she knows you would just work her like a dog again. Well, what is the point of hiring someone who cannot do her job? Su-en replied. Her voice was as sweet as her words were harsh. She could be very soft on Jinchi, but word was that every lady in waiting who served under her considered her a monster. I must say the amount of work I do every day is too much for these old bones, she went on, accompanied by a demonstrative rubbing of her shoulders. Oh, if only you would hurry up and take a consort, Master Jinchi, even just one, my life might be a little easier. Jinchi could only give a dry smile. Don't you worry that if I picked the wrong lady your work would only increase. No, indeed, it would make hiring new ladies in waiting so much simpler. They covet the position of your wife, and that is why they come after you with such fervour. It wasn't that she thought those types would disappear completely, but they could be reduced in number significantly. She sounded as if she were discussing garden pests. When Su-en began speaking about consorts, only one person came to Jinchi's mind. He knew she considered the entire idea nothing but trouble. It would have been different if she had been the sheltered daughter of a wealthy family, but for someone who could already support herself and live her own life, being Jinchi's consort could only be suffocating. Young master, Su-en said sadly, observing Jinchi's grim expression, before I served you, I served His Majesty. I was not perhaps as close to him as I am to you, but I knew him. I can imagine. His first consort, Lady Arduo, had quite a rough time. I know she was subject to harassment from a great many women. Jinchi thought of the handsome lady who dressed in men's clothes and was now in seclusion. It was hard to picture her as the object of mean-spirited pranks. They could be terribly cruel. It was so bad that I wondered if I should try to intervene. Then suddenly I discovered they had all fallen into line with her. Jinchi did not reply. Arduo had always been Arduo. At first, when His Majesty sought Lady Arduo, I thought it must be some kind of joke. She was his milk sibling, practically one of the boys. They still played games of tag until who knows when. Jinchi had heard people say that if she'd been born a man, Arduo would have been the emperor's right hand. With all possible respect to Empress Jyokayu, His Majesty was deeply disappointed to realize the one he truly wanted by his side was in no position to be there. "What are you getting at?" Jinshi finally said. "Oh, nothing. Just the ramblings of an old woman. I simply hoped you might choose a path that would leave you without regrets." With that, Suhyun picked up the plate. A lone slice of pear was still on it and she left the room. "Without regrets," Jinshi mumbled. That would not be easy. Chapter 11. Before the celebration. It was high summer and a festive atmosphere filled the capital. Visitors from foreign parts meant money flowed freely. Events and happenings would naturally build until a spontaneous, unofficial party was in swing. Celebrations were not inherently bad. They made everyone lively and happy, both in the court and beyond it. How did that liveliness show itself within the palace walls? The physician gave a one-word answer: overwork. He observed that the bureaucrat looked pale and had bags under his eyes. The man also had a 1,000-yard stare. "Be sure you get some sleep. You will work yourself to death, literally. Sleep is so important. People think they can go without it for a day or two, but it will catch up with them as they get older." Jinshi had once been getting very little sleep. Each time he visited the pleasure quarter, Maomao had insisted he take a nap. Setting up shop in the capital required the bureaucracy's permission. Street stalls could appear on a whim, but a proper storefront needed permits, if only for tax purposes. If you were caught avoiding the required paperwork, the best outcome you could expect was a large fine. You might even be sent to prison. Festivals always drew large crowds. Foreigners were arriving, meaning trade goods would be easier to find. Many people had traveled to the capital hoping to acquire some. All of this meant the civil officials were doing paperwork morning, noon and night. The soldiers had been busy as well. The frequency of the freak strategist's visits declined, and Maomao was grateful for that. However, it might have been more accurate to say that after the food poisoning incident, his subordinates had set up a sort of dragnet to contain him. More people meant more potential for crime, and it was the soldiers' job to shore up public safety. Because the soldiers had training time to dedicate to work and were generally strong, they collapsed less often than the unfortunate bureaucrats. However, they sustained more injuries. "HFFF, can you be a little more careful?" a soldier demanded as Yao applied medicine to a cut that was quite long. "It is just a flesh wound," Maomao thought. The soldier said he had gotten the injury when he confronted a man. The man had opened a stall without a permit and was selling medicines that weren't quite right. When they tried to shut down his shop, the man pulled a knife on them. "I'm sorry," Yao said steadily, although Maomao could see her lips purse. She did not seem angry, but rather like she was holding back tears. NN quietly went to help. She offered the soldier a cup. "This should numb the pain," she said. Maomao was fairly confident she had simply picked up a cup of cold barley tea. The physicians still only rarely let the young women handle patients. However, they thought quite highly of NN's small, thoughtful touches like that. Complaints about the medical office had reportedly decreased. Maomao was busy making medicines. The doctors believed she could be trusted with preparing simple balms. If she limited her desire to work on more unusual concoctions, things weren't so bad. This was a good position for her. She did not have the attitude, and compared to the other two, she wasn't as striking in appearance for dealing with patients. Maomao balm. NN had started speaking to Maomao in a more informal tone, since the incident with the cookies. Her change in attitude had prompted Yao to start talking to Maomao a little more, so perhaps NN had done it in order to change her mistress's childish behavior. "Perhaps. Balm, here you go," Maomao said. As she was about to hand it over, she glanced at the patient. It was the whiny soldier. He made a lot of noise for a rather minor injury. Without a word, Maomao grabbed some balm she had in the folds of her robes. She swapped it for the medicine she had been about to give to NN. This was the perfect chance. A lively patient would be the perfect chance to test her new salve. Maomao was surprised by a voice behind her. "What do you think you are doing?" she heard. She turned around and saw an elderly physician looking at her with a glare. "You switched those medicines, didn't you?" "What do you mean, sir?" she asked. She was trying to sound innocent, but the physician grabbed her experimental medicine. He continued to glare at her as he swiped a finger through it. "This medicine has something in it." Something unusual was mixed in. I reiterate, sir, what do you mean? This time Maomao's attempt at deflection only earned her a knuckle to the head. For your information, Liu Men asked us to be especially strict with you. It would be hard for her to wriggle out of this with someone who knew her father. This doctor was the strictest in the medical office, and he already suspected she had gotten her position because of her family connections. What did you put in this? After a moment Maomao responded, a little bit of frog. She had heard frog oil was supposed to be good and wanted to try it. However, it had proven hard to get oil from frogs. In the end, she had only been able to make what the doctor was currently holding in his hand. I have heard they use frog oil as a medicine in foreign countries. Have you now? I certainly have not. In fact, neither had Maomao. She had simply thought it might be possible it would have some sort of effect. She had been careful to choose a non-toxic frog. She had also confirmed there were no obvious ill effects by testing it on herself. She was not savage enough to give someone else a concoction she hadn't tested for toxicity. In any case, I am confiscating this. What? No, thus she found her medicine taken away. And after she had spent her day off searching around in the rice paddies, did you say frog? Yao asked, her face pale. She looked as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You would put frogs in medicine? There must be something wrong with you. Maomao dug in one ear with her finger and ignored her. She must have gone too far because NN nudged her with her elbow. She said, I understand you may not be familiar with these things, but they are a typical meal for many people. Yao looked even more disbelieving than before. She turned to NN as if to ask if that could possibly be true. He replied, she is right, milady. Frogs are frequently eaten. You might also be interested to know that sometimes people try to pass off sliced snake meat as fish. Whatever color was left in Yao's face drained away when snakes were mentioned. Do not worry, NN assured her. I will make sure no snakes end up on your table. I would be perfectly happy to see them on my table, Maomao offered. There were many small bones, which might make them a little work to eat, but you simply had to fry them up and they were fine. If the smell bothered you, fragrant or medicinal herbs could easily take care of it. Maomao actually had several skewers of dried snake meat with her. She considered it a good snack in case she became hungry. She took one skewer from her bag and offered it to Yao as a silent invitation. However, Yao only shook her head and turned weakly toward the wall. Maomao shrugged and put the skewer back. No slacking, ladies, snapped the doctor. The three women abandoned their chat and got back to work. Maomao and the others had lunch at a nearby dining hall. The food was free and you could even get seconds. But if you didn't want what they were serving, you had to bring your own meal or snack. The court ladies ate separately from the men. Typically, Yao seemed almost indifferent toward Maomao. However, during meals she moved a little closer. This was because of the atmosphere in the dining area. Whether in the rear palace or the pleasure quarter, women had a side that emerged only when they were with other women. When the ladies were together in a corner of the dining hall, away from the men, the real talk began. I give up. I just cannot abide soldiers. He earns a good wage, but he is so busy, and much of his money goes to all the food he needs. He doesn't even treat me to a decent meal. That's awful. But civil officials aren't so great either. That one who chatted me up the other day, do you remember him? Well, it was nice of him to ask, but I just don't think I have anything to talk about with a man who has made his way in life by organizing shelf after shelf of moldy books. I can't even accept his hair stick. It is so old-fashioned, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing it. Oh, take it. I know you are just going to pawn it anyway. Many of the court ladies came from high-ranking families, but their personalities were not always as good as their upbringings. It was a difficult reality for a genuinely prim and proper young lady. Maomao usually chose a seat in a corner of the dining area, and wherever she went, Yao would dart after her. She knew that if Maomao was there, the crueler ladies would keep their distance. This was especially true of those who were hostile to the newly appointed medical assistants. I just tried to give them fair warning, Maomao thought. Now they wouldn't get anywhere near her. It was like the Crystal Pavilion all over again. So what had happened? A court lady had decided to launch a preemptive strike against the young medical assistants, believing them to be naive. She approached them with a large group of followers, looking much like Yao had at the beginning. Yao had been passionate about her work, but this woman seemed to be at the palace hoping to find a husband. She had a different male dining companion at almost every meal. It was as if she took pride in being a woman of easy virtue. Maomao noticed a rash around the woman's mouth. She had said, "It seems you have a substantial number of partners." She asked, "Are you aware of the risks of illness?" She was simply making sure. The woman had said, "I wouldn't be with a man who was sick." Then Maomao told her about how sexually transmitted diseases could be present but dormant. She explained that even if her partner wasn't sick, one of his other partners might be, and the illness could still be passed to her. She was not the only one who could sleep around after all. Finally, Maomao had explained that several sexually transmitted diseases could be communicated at once. "Have you been feeling tired?" she asked. "Is there any swelling or soreness in your private areas? Or bleeding, for that matter?" As Maomao proceeded with her questioning, the woman had grown paler and finally left the scene. Perhaps it was a misjudgment to treat this woman as she did the courtesans at the verdigris house, Maomao thought. If she wasn't treated quickly, the woman's nose might rot and fall off. Maomao had been speaking very seriously, but Yao's face had become bright red during the conversation. NN likely did not know much about sexually transmitted diseases because she was taking many notes. Now let us return to the present moment. Today's meal was congee, soup, and one of several side dishes. You could choose your sides freely, but if you arrive too late, they might be out of your favorite. We mentioned the small quantities of food. This was because full meals were generally served only in the morning and evening. The afternoon service was essentially a large snack. For her side dish, Maomao took steamed chicken with cold vegetables. Meat dishes were popular and usually went to those who arrived first. The other two women chose the same thing. "Just so you know, I am not copying you," Yao said. "I did not say you were," Maomao thought. In its own way, her behavior was rather charming. Ever since Maomao realized this, she had started to feel affection for the other court lady. She was much easier to deal with than someone who hid their true intentions. The other side dishes included fish and something vinegared. The fish looked a bit like snake meat if you squinted. Perhaps that was why Yao hadn't wanted it. You could call her twisted, but the realization made Maomao want to tease the young woman just a bit. They set up camp in their usual corner. Normally, Maomao ate in silence, but today she said, "They say some sort of foreign dignitary is coming, right?" It had been all the talk recently. Did you know that in the desert, snakes and lizards are considered important sources of nutrients? People eat them there regularly. Food culture differs depending on the place, as one would quickly discover by traveling west. Maomao had learned this firsthand during her trip to the western capital. She hadn't gotten to do much sightseeing, but there had been a lot of strange offerings at the street-side food stalls. Suhari, who disliked snakes and insects, had been quite distressed. Maomao remembered with a warm feeling. "Maomao," NN said, giving her a discouraging look. Yao's spoon was frozen in midair. "I am not hungry anymore," she said, putting the spoon down. It looked like Maomao had gone a bit too far. "Lady Yao, you need your food," NN said. "I might have some appetite for a snack," Yao replied, still looking a little miffed. NN considered it for a moment. Then she produced a cloth packet and unwrapped it to reveal a bamboo cylinder. It was a canteen. The cafeteria servings were never enough for Yao's very large appetite, and NN was always prepared with a supplement. She said, "You can have this after you finish your meal," glancing Yao's way. Yao grumbled, but she started eating her congee again. Maomao thought that NN knows how to handle her. NN got a bowl and emptied its contents into it. The food was sweet-smelling, translucent and moist. "That's your snack," Maomao said. Yao really was rich. This was a luxurious treat. It was the perfect summer dessert. It even showed up in Empress Jayukai's evening meals every once in a while. "It's Lady Yao's favorite," NN said. She made the remark and touched her lips, correctly guessing that Maomao knew the dessert. "I thought she was looking out for Yao. It was cruel what she was doing. Was this also in the interest of helping Yao grow?" "It's a little warm, but it's still good," said Yao, digging into her jiggling snack with gusto. "What was the name of the dish?" Hasma. The ingredients are frogs' reproductive organs. For Yao's sake, Maomao decided not to say anything. Chapter 12, Child of a Foreign Land. "Rather lively today, isn't it?" Liu Humin said. He seemed perfectly relaxed. He wasn't wearing his white doctor's outfit today. He was in men's clothing, but his pudgy silhouette and warm expression still gave him the appearance of an old lady. He moved slowly but steadily along the street, leaning on his cane. "Be careful not to trip," Maomao said, watching closely as she walked beside him. Roads were not usually a problem for him, but this one was especially busy. The festival atmosphere made it even more crowded. For an old man missing a kneecap, a small bump from someone walking by could be enough to make him fall. "Oh, I am fine, I am sure you are. Just humor me." Normally Maomao might have spoken more directly to her father, but today she tried to be polite.